Welcome back to the 1% Insight, the podcast for B2B technology marketing and sales teams looking to scale their pipeline opportunities through content marketing, with the primary focus being on utilizing B2B technology podcasts and social media marketing. In this episode, we're going to be discussing how a B2B technology podcast can support your sales teams during long B2B technology sales cycles. So let's start at the beginning. B2B technology sales cycles can be quite lengthy. Depending on the industry you are in or the product/service that you are offering, this can take anywhere from 6 to 12 or even longer depending on the deal size. Within this sales cycle, the majority of the time, the prospect is not in direct contact with your sales team. Therefore, staying top of mind with these prospects during their buying journey is of critical importance to your company and your revenue goals. In this episode, we're going to briefly discuss how to engage buyers, influence buying committees, and building trust with your B2B technology prospects. Let's jump into the episode. Engaging B2B technology buyers. One aspect of a B2B technology podcast that can really benefit your sales team is that it can engage prospects and potential buyers while they are in their sales cycle. As an example, you may have had an initial discussion with a prospect a couple months ago. They were all hopeful for the tool that you offer and how it was going to benefit their organization. But like we know, there's a lot of people involved and these things take time. Your next conversation with that prospect might be them coming to you saying, listen, we're ready to go, or it could be crickets and you might never hear from them again. We want to try and take control of the process as much as we can and influence them to showcase to them that your company and your solution is the right fit for them. In order to do so, we need to stay in contact with them and we need to give them the opportunity to engage with our company without necessarily have to schedule a call. We want to find ways to allow the prospect to engage with your company, even if that is not jumping on a sales call, jumping on a demo to showcase your solution. That's where the B2B technology podcast comes in. You might be wondering, that's grand in theory, but how are we actually going to develop this podcast? How are we going to stick to a weekly schedule? What topics do we discuss? How are we going to get people to listen to it? Those are all valid questions, but go back to the basics. We are looking at providing as much value as we can, placing ourselves as a value provider, a guide within the prospect's journey to help them better understand how they can elevate their company through a solution like ours. And it all comes back to your ideal customer persona. Your target audience group, you're just focusing on them, creating content that resonates with them and will help guide them through their journey. Now, it is very easy to go to the other side and start using the podcast as a pure promotional marketing channel. And yes, I do believe, and we do it with clients, we do showcase how your solution can benefit the prospect and their type of companies, but it shouldn't all just be about, here's our solution, here's why we're better than everybody else, this is why you should buy from us, here's how you can buy. That won't work. The reason it won't work is that most of your target audience group aren't actually in market at this present time. This is known as the 95-5 theory. And essentially, it's showcasing that on average, 95% of your target audience group are not in market at this given time. Now, this is just a theory. It won't be applicable to everybody's industry or company, but it is a good reminder to showcase that the large majority of people you might be trying to target aren't able or don't want to buy your solution at present. Reasons for this may be they're in a long-term contract with another vendor and they simply cannot go with another solution provider. They might not even be problem aware that your solution solves, so they might even know that they have a problem that needs solving. That's where your content is going to come in as a crucial aspect of your marketing and sales efforts. Let's focus on your ICP and let's develop the content from there. What questions are your ICP searching for? This is a critical part of developing your podcast. There's no point just start creating a load of content, random content, just to try and get views. That won't work and it won't resonate with the people you're trying to speak to. So go back through the pain points of your target audience group, whether that be out from sales calls, from market research, and focus on those key questions that they're trying to get answered and then simply answer them. There's different stages of the B2B buying journey. Everybody will go through these stages, and it's important to realize that one piece of content won't, fit all prospects. It's important that we create a different type of content to suit people at different needs of essentially their B2B buyer's journey. We need to meet them where they are. For example, a more problem aware piece where showcasing, do you know how many hours you are wasting of your team's resources each year by not doing X? That would be more at the beginning of the B2B buying journey, where someone who's closer to a buying decision and are at the latter stages of the B2B buying journey, they need more validation, and we need to reduce the risk of purchasing your solution. So you need client testimonials, videos, case studies. All of these will be collateral that they will need to help them make that buying decision. So essentially, we're trying to create different pieces of content throughout this podcast. So you're not trying to squeeze everything into one episode. There is a lot of time and there is a lot of space to create a lot of great content that will fit the B2B buying journey of your prospects and help them make their next decision, ultimately getting them to the latter stage and making them feel good enough and safe enough that this is a great decision for our company to pick company X, your company. On the topic of engaging these buyers throughout their long sales cycles, framing it as their journey and not your sales cycle is also a really important factor to take into account. Yes, we have targets, we have quotas, and this goes from an organizational level all the way down to your sales development reps, BDRs, etc. But it's important to keep and focus that the main person of interest here is the prospect. And forcing them to make a sale won't work well in the long term for your company. It might look great at the end of a month where you're getting sales through, but for the long-term relationship of that client, that customer, making sure that it's not a forceful sale and that they're making it in their own time, but you're helping them make that is really important. So while they're going months without contact with your company, another way of engaging them is taking the content from your weekly, bi-weekly podcast and repurposing that across your different marketing channels. So for example, one podcast episode, ideally recorded in a video-based format, can be used as a long-form YouTube video. It can then be used obviously for your podcast, so you can take the audio and share it to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. You can go a step further and start creating short-form social media content based on key insights from the video podcast. You can take the transcript from your podcast and the key insights and start turning that into a newsletter, into a blog, and you can slowly start to see this content flywheel coming about that can help fuel your marketing operations, but also it engages your buyers across different channels. If you're depending on one channel as a way of engaging and communicating with your prospects, it's a lot more risky. Whereas if you diversify the channels that you are on, you'll have a better chance of speaking to them and keeping top of mind. Another way in which you can use a B2B technology podcast of your own to engage your potential buyers is utilize the content that you're creating from the podcast, but use it in your sales assets. So for example, if you want to send automated email outreach to reconnect prospects who have been on an introductory call with you, you can share different types of content to help them throughout their journey. So you can just send them an email, include a link to the video. You might be making LinkedIn carousels. You can direct them to different pieces of content that might help them throughout their B2B buying journey and help them progress through that journey, all coming from the content that you are creating on a consistent basis that is value adding. Appealing to B2B buying committees. A clear distinction between B2B and B2C is that there are buying committees in most cases in B2B. So in any situation, you can be speaking from 2 to anywhere from 10, 12 people, depending how large the contract is potentially going to be. This creates a level of complexity within your B2B technology marketing and sales that essentially you need to address. So there's going to be different stakeholders and they all have different values. You have the top level, CEOs, C-suite level executives that are focused on where the company's going, return on investment, and essentially what it's going to do for the company at a much wider scale. You have the heads of the department that might be integrating your tool, that might need to understand, how's my team going to use this? Does this fit into my budget, etc. And then you have the actual end users who are going to be utilizing the tool. Can they use it effectively? How is it going to benefit their own roles on a day-to-day basis? You have to address fears that any of the different stakeholders might have. This is why a podcast for your company can be a great asset in speaking to many different stakeholders within that B2B buying committee. One way that you can do this is developing different episodes to speak to a different persona. Like I mentioned earlier, there's no need to cram every insight into one episode, and there's not need to speak to every persona within that company and buying committee in one episode. Take this as an example. You have a fintech tool and you want to sell it into another organization, and we're going to break it down now in terms of the different stakeholders that might be involved in this decision. So let's take it from the perspective of a B2B buying committee and executives, for example, C-suite. In this instance, might be looking, so you could be speaking to a chief technology officer, your CEO even, and they're going to want episodes specifically around return on investment, cost, implementation, how it benefits a company in the long term. Then if you're looking at heads of department, for example, you might do a technical deep dive into the integrations that it might have, security levels, and they may be focused on those elements because that's key to their role and as a key responsibility of theirs that you need to address. And then end users, so the actual team that they have implementing the tool, using it on a day-to-day basis, they might need how-to guides, how to best utilize the tool, why it can benefit them in their role and help them excel, whether they have goals for increasing the likelihood of getting a promotion through excellent performance, and how this tool can help them achieve that within their day-to-day operations. Another way in which a B2B podcast can engage B2B buying committees is creating custom playlists of episodes grouped together to serve different target personas within that committee. So like I mentioned earlier, there's no need to speak to every persona in every episode and share all the insights into 1 hours long episode. Create bite-sized content and then create a playlist of this content that you can then share in your sales efforts. So for example, if your sales team are really focused on 1, 2, 3 key people of influence within this B2B buying committee, create a custom playlist of episodes that you've grouped together. It might be a private YouTube playlist. It might be on your website that they can easily access. This creates a lot of trust with this B2B buying committee because not only have you firstly gone off and created the content, edited it, and presented it to them, you're also creating an opportunity for you to speak and engage with this person over the course of hours. And we all know that in order to get deals done and win over B2B buying committees, they need to trust your company more than the other companies. They need to say, this is the company for us. Lastly, building trust and authority with your B2B technology podcast. In an age where there's lots of AI content on LinkedIn, there's lots of content in general where prospects in this situation where they're getting bombarded with information on a daily basis, it's hard to know who to trust. So we need to make it easy for them to showcase that we're a trusted resource, and that comes from creating quality content and also using tactics within our podcast and our content to elevate that trust, because the company that has the most trust will most likely get the deal. Therefore, more trust, more revenue, and expansion for your own company. The easiest and most effective way, and I'll do another episode on this in terms of statistics around customer testimonials, but this is the quickest win that you can get. So get your top performing customers and ask them to be on your podcast. Interview them, ask them what was the situation like beforehand, what problems were they experiencing, how did your tool help them, what's been the result and the growth they've experienced as a result of working with your company. Whatever the key metrics are, get them on video, record. It might only be 20, 30 minutes, but that customer testimonial video and the success story is a key piece of content that can help build trust instantly. Seeing another company similar to yours succeeding with your tool is invaluable to your marketing and sales teams. This type of content can be the difference in a company choosing another company over yours. If they can see themselves within those success stories, you're helping them paint a picture of what life and business might be like when utilizing your solution. Another way of building authority, more so than trust, will be to ask industry experts to jump on your podcast and speak about different topics relating to your target audience group. So these might be, kind of industry leaders within the technology space. And if you go into the different industries that you might be in, it might be green tech, it might be fintech, and it might be med tech. Find your industry experts, those that your audience already follow and trust, get them onto your podcast, send them a LinkedIn, get their email, ask them to be on the podcast, and essentially have a conversation with them. It can be very informal interview, just chatting about different topics that are happening right now within your space. This can be a great way of actually getting more listeners to your podcast because you're leveraging their audience to bring them over to yours and listen to a really insightful episode. But on the back end of that, you're building a lot of authority with your audience because they're seeing this industry expert on your podcast chatting to either your CEO or whoever else might be the host of the podcast. And they're placing a lot of trust in your brand as a result because they trust the person that you're speaking to. And it's a net positive for your brand and your podcast. Another way that you can build trust and authority with your target audience through a B2B podcast is sharing educational content that explains complex problems and makes it very easy to understand. So people can understand videos and process information about complex topics much quicker through video than actually reading a blog post, for example. So this is why it's really beneficial for your company to start breaking down complex topics that face your target audience group, share it in bite-sized content, step 1, 2, 3, and showcase that as educational content. It's not a hard sell. You're just providing value to your audience, staying top of mind during these long sales cycles. Another way that you can build trust is actually having your sales reps utilize the episodes that you're creating. And these can be nice conversation starters to build credibility early on in the process. So for brand new leads that haven't engaged your company before and you're doing outbound, your podcast episodes and your podcast as a resource in general can be a great way of starting a conversation. For example, saying, "Hi, X, we've seen you're in this industry. We have a lot of clients in this. We've actually developed a podcast to showcase how you can navigate the challenges that companies like yours face. Here's the links to Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts. I think this episode might suit you really well as I've just seen your company has announced funding of X, and this usually happens at this stage of growth." That can be a fantastic way of getting people to engage your brand straight away. You're not asking them to jump on a call. You're not putting that pressure on in the early days. You're just literally saying, "Here's what we have. We hope it's of value. If you are interested in discussing more, we'd love to chat. If not, keep up to date with all the content we have going across our LinkedIn, YouTube, and podcast." That wraps up today's episode. And it's just important to realize that your B2B technology podcast isn't just content. When you actually deep dive into what it can mean for your sales teams, it can actually bridge that gap between marketing and sales. So sales can utilize the content that we're creating in marketing, and marketing can listen to sales and say, what's the feedback we're getting from customers, from prospects? What challenges are they facing? Let's use that in our content and bring it back to them. Your B2B technology podcast can be a real asset to your company from both a marketing and sales perspective, engaging B2B buyers and B2B buying committees during long sales cycles, building that trust and authority so that when it is time to book the demo, make a decision happen, that you've done all the groundwork to keep them engaged and you're top of mind and you're the first solution provider that they go to as a result of the months of content that they've been consuming from you and not your competitors. This is the 1% Insight. You can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube. We've also created a free resource for B2B technology and sales teams on how they can utilize content to scale their pipeline opportunities. If you'd like to access this free video and guide, head over to trend7m.com/B2B Tech. We look forward to catching you in the next episode of the 1% Insight.